All right, the President of the United States just on CNBC on their morning show, Squawk Box. And this is exactly what I was just talking about with our last tirade caller, Travis in Lenexa, who wants me to basically pump up whoever runs against Sharice Davids, which is not my job. Now, if we get someone who is as entertaining and interesting as Trump running against Sharice Davids, I'll have them on every week, even if they get their butts kicked by 20 points. I don't really care. But this is why, Trump gets all the media that he wants, because he's hilarious. He's one of a kind. He's not a boring politician. And take a listen to what he had to say this morning on CNBC. Let's roll the clip.
And I believe what they did is they went to the regulators. Banks are not afraid of anything but a regulator. They're regulators and their wives. They're more afraid of their wives than the regulators. But the group they're really afraid of is bank regulators.
Where does he get this stuff? The banks are not afraid of anything but a regulator. And then he goes, the regulators and their wives. They're afraid of them, the wives, more than the regulators. Like, that is just absolute gold. You find me that guy or gal in the 3rd District, I'll put them on every week. You sell me on someone who's got liners and zingers like that, come on in. You can co-host for an hour. If you're just going to be there and be like, Democrats stink, Sharice is bad, vote for me. Great, thanks. I'm a grandpa. I've got kids. I want to lower the debt. Okay, cool.
I'm not your run-of-the-mill candidate. Right?
Oh, my gosh. I've just seen enough of it over the years. Just enough. So that was Trump's first zinger. And then this happened live on the air on CNBC as well. They tried to fact check him. The problem is their fact check was incorrect. Let's roll clip 2.
Here we go. So you did get the highest number of votes in Texas, so that's true. But when you were talking about...
You don't have to say anything more, Joe.
I got to say this.
No, don't say anything more. Don't qualify it by saying,
no,
I got the highest number of votes
you did.
in the history
I'm moving
of
on.
Texas.
I'm moving on to your claim that...
That is just, that's it. Combative, back and forth. And that was what Joe Kernan on CNBC, who's the one guy on the show who's kind of like a Trump ally, who actually likes Trump and defends Trump on CNBC, at least with regularity. So he's going back and forth with Joe because CNBC was trying to fact check Trump when he said that he got the most votes in the history of Texas, but then they had to admit Trump was right because that's true. So that was another wildly entertaining moment last hour on CNBC with the President of the United States on the phone. And sometimes I know, there's something to be said for doing the interview in person, on camera, right, which Trump will do. But sometimes Trump is at his best when he's just on these phone calls. And even though it's on TV, he's just riffing. And when you're not in that TV setting where you're a little stiffer and you're sitting up straight for the camera and you're just sitting back, in your chair and you got your phone to your ear and you're just letting it rip, sometimes that ends up with even better content. And it ends up being more interesting and more entertaining. And you got a lot of that. I'm seeing these clips all over social media now after the interview with President Trump on CNBC last hour. Now, as funny as some of these moments were, we got to something else the president had to say here about the jobs report. Of course, we know the president was unhappy with the jobs report last week, came in below expectations, 70,000 instead of 100,000. We had the 2 months prior revised down by 258,000. The president fired the person who runs the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And here's what he had to say about that on CNBC.
And certainly suboptimal, but rigged? Where do you get the notion that it's rigged, or do you have any evidence there?
It is antiquated, but it's also very political. And, I had an election recently where I did very well, won every swing state, won the popular vote, won everything, all right? Won all the counties. It's, I think, 87% of the counties were Republican up. That's never happened before. And yet I had to go through hell. And just days before the election, they put out numbers that it was like the country was on fire. It was doing so well. And then
now, hold on. Stop right there. That is just not true. With all due respect, that's not true. October of last year, the jobs number came out right before the election. At 12,000 jobs added in October of last year, the expectations were for much more than that. So the month before the election, October of 24, we got a jobs number of 12,000, which was the weakest monthly increase since December of 2020 in the middle of COVID. So when Trump's saying, hey, basically this Bureau of Labor Statistics was goosing the jobs numbers to try to help Kamala Harris get elected, no. In October, weeks before the election, was the worst jobs report of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's time in office. So this is, I think, where he gets himself into some trouble here. He fires the head of the BLS, so now what's going to happen? If we get a great jobs report, what are people going to say on the other side? They're going to be like, Trump's got someone goosing the numbers on his behalf. Now, he's right when he says it's an antiquated system. It is. I mean, they're kind of just seems like guessing because these reports are always getting revised by a large number either way, especially over the last year and a half to 2 years or so, right? So he's right about the antiquated nature of these numbers and the report, but that's not the fault of the person who's just basically reporting the reports. It's not on them. So he's got himself now, I think, in this weird spot where he says the numbers he doesn't like are basically rigged because the people in charge were political in nature. He then cites the fact that they had big numbers going up to the election, which, if they were trying to help Kamala get elected, why would they have put out the worst jobs numbers report in basically 4 years the month before the election? And why would they give Trump great job report numbers in his first 6 months in office, which gives him wind to his back? Why would they do those two things if it was just about the politics? And now you're in this spot where a good jobs report in the next few months, people are going to say they're goosed and they're rigged. Instead of saying, hey, here are some good stories in the underlying jobs report, and there are really good stories in the underlying jobs report, you just got to promote them and talk about them more. That's it. But no matter what, it was a wildly entertaining interview. You get me that person in the 3rd District, I'll give them all day, every day.